The story of life on our planet is one of extraordinary resilience. But to truly understand this strength, we must first look at a time when life almost vanished completely. Imagine a world silenced. This was our planet 252 million years ago, at the close of the Permian period. A series of cataclysmic volcanic eruptions in what is now Siberia tore the world apart, spewing unimaginable quantities of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. The air grew toxic, the oceans turned acidic, and temperatures soared to unbearable levels. This was not a swift catastrophe, but a slow, creeping doom that suffocated the planet for thousands of years. It was the greatest challenge life had ever faced. This event, now known as the Great Dying, was the most severe extinction in Earth's history. It was a near-total reset for the planet's ecosystems. On land, the vast forests of giant ferns and primitive conifers withered and died, leaving behind a barren, dusty landscape prone to colossal dust storms. The once teeming oceans, now starved of oxygen and poisoned with acid, became vast graveyards. Up to 96% of all marine species disappeared forever. The vibrant coral reefs, which had existed for millions of years, were completely wiped out, leaving a profound emptiness beneath the waves. The world fell quiet, its vibrant chorus of life reduced to a faint, desperate whisper. The dominant animals of the Permian, the mighty Gorgonopsians with their saber-like teeth and the heavily built Parasaurs, were no match for the planet-wide devastation. They vanished, leaving behind only their fossilized remains as a testament to their former reign. The intricate food webs that had supported them for millennia collapsed entirely. This was a world where survival was not about being the strongest or the fastest, but simply about being able to endure. The rules of life had been fundamentally rewritten. The Earth had become a hostile, almost alien world, and the few creatures that clung to existence faced a monumental task: to begin again, to repopulate a silent and empty planet. The scale of the loss is almost impossible for us to comprehend. It was a pivotal moment, a great filter that determined the future course of evolution on Earth. The world that emerged from this crucible would be profoundly different. The extinction cleared the slate, providing a unique, if brutal, opportunity for new forms of life to arise from the ashes. The silence that fell across the planet was not an ending, but a pause. It was the deep, quiet breath the world took before the dawn of a new era, the Triassic period. And in that quiet, the first stirrings of a remarkable recovery were already beginning. In the aftermath of the Great Dying, with the world stripped bare, one creature not only survived but thrived in the emptiness. It was not a fearsome predator or a giant herbivore. It was a humble, pig-sized animal called Lystrosaurus. This peculiar creature, with its stumpy legs, barrel-shaped body and beak-like tusks, seems an unlikely candidate for a world conqueror. Yet for a time it was the most common vertebrate animal on Earth. Its fossils have been found on every continent, a clear sign of its incredible success in a world where so many others had failed. Lystrosaurus became the face of survival in the early Triassic. What was the secret to its remarkable resilience? Lystrosaurus possessed a unique set of adaptations perfectly suited to the harsh new world. Its powerful, digging forelimbs suggest it was a burrower, able to escape the scorching surface temperatures and toxic air by seeking refuge underground. This would have been a critical advantage on a planet with a damaged atmosphere and extreme climate fluctuations. Furthermore, its lungs were thought to be unusually large and efficient, allowing it to cope with the low oxygen conditions that prevailed. It was a generalist, a creature built not for a specific niche, but for sheer, stubborn endurance against the odds. For millions of years, the landscape was dominated by these hardy animals. They were the survivors, the pioneers of the new world. Imagine vast, dusty plains populated by sprawling herds of Lystrosaurus, methodically stripping the tough, low-lying vegetation like dicroidium ferns that were among the first plants to recolonize the land. They were the foundation of the recovering ecosystem, a vital food source for the few predators that had also made it through the extinction. In their sheer numbers, they represented a flicker of life that was steadily growing into a flame, repopulating the empty continents and kickstarting the long process of ecological recovery. The reign of Lystrosaurus was a crucial transitional phase. It shows us that in the wake of catastrophe, it is often not the most spectacular creatures that inherit the Earth, but the most adaptable. Lystrosaurus was a placeholder, a vital link between the lost world of the Permian and the strange new world that was beginning to take shape. Its dominance was temporary, but its role was profound. By its very existence, it proved that life, even when pushed to the absolute brink, possessed an unbreakable will to continue. It held the line, keeping the spark of vertebrate life alive until the planet had healed enough for new and more complex forms to emerge. While Lystrosaurus dominated the landscape in terms of numbers, another group of survivors was quietly adapting in the shadows. These were the cynodonts, a group of mammal-like reptiles. They were generally smaller and less numerous than Lystrosaurus, but they possessed a suite of advanced characteristics that would ultimately prove to be revolutionary for the future of life on Earth. Unlike their more reptilian contemporaries, cynodonts like Thrinaxodon showed signs of features we now associate with mammals. They likely had whiskers, which would have been sensitive tools for navigating and hunting in low light, perhaps indicating a nocturnal lifestyle to avoid the heat of the day. These creatures were a crucial step on the evolutionary path that would eventually lead to us. Examining their fossils, we can see the beginnings of a transformation. Their teeth were becoming more specialized, with incisors for nipping, canines for gripping, and molars for chewing, allowing for more efficient processing of food. This was a significant advantage in a world where resources were scarce. They were likely warm-blooded, or at least on their way to becoming so, which would have granted them a higher level of activity and the ability to thrive in a wider range of temperatures than their cold-blooded counterparts. They were small, but they were adaptable and innovative. The cynodonts also displayed behaviors that hint at the future of mammals. Fossil evidence of a Thrinaxodon found curled up in a burrow with a different type of animal, a Brumistega, suggests a complex social structure, or at least a tolerance not often seen. It is widely believed that cynodonts cared for their young, nurturing them in burrows and protecting them from the harsh world outside. This investment in their offspring would have ensured a higher survival rate for the next generation. They were not just surviving, they were developing the strategies of care and cooperation that would become hallmarks of mammalian success for hundreds of millions of years to come. In the grand tapestry of Triassic life, the cynodonts were playing a long game. They were overshadowed by the great herds of Lystrosaurus and later by the first dinosaurs. But they were biding their time, honing the traits that would one day allow their descendants, the first true mammals, to inherit a world reshaped by yet another extinction event. Their story is a quiet one, a tale of survival through ingenuity and care rather than brute force. They are a reminder that the seeds of the future are often sown in the most unassuming of pioneers, our own very distant but recognizable kin. Their tenacity ensured that the mammal lineage would endure. While life on land was slowly recovering, an equally dramatic story was unfolding beneath the waves. The Great Dying had left the oceans barren and acidic, a silent, watery desert. But as the planet's chemistry began to stabilize, life returned to the seas with remarkable speed and creativity. The first to come back were simple, hardy organisms, but they were soon followed by a new and spectacular dynasty of predators. Land-dwelling reptiles, perhaps driven to the coasts in search of food, began to venture back into the water, the very environment their most ancient ancestors had crawled out of hundreds of millions of years before. This was a monumental evolutionary reversal. Among the most successful of these new marine pioneers were the ichthyosaurs. Their name means fish lizard, and it is a fitting description. Early forms like Cartarinchus were somewhat awkward, with stout bodies and feet that could still support them on land, but over millions of years they became masters of the aquatic realm. Their bodies grew streamlined and dolphin-like, their limbs transformed into efficient flippers for steering, and their tails developed powerful flukes for propulsion. They evolved enormous eyes, some of the largest relative to body size of any animal that has ever lived, allowing them to hunt in the deep, dark waters for fish and squid-like belemnites. The ichthyosaurs were not alone. Another group of marine reptiles, the nothosaurs, also flourished. These creatures were more like reptilian seals with webbed feet and long, flexible necks. They were semi-aquatic, able to hunt in the water, but also capable of hauling themselves out onto the rocky shores to rest or lay eggs. The placodonts, meanwhile, were heavily built, almost turtle-like reptiles with broad, crushing teeth. They specialized in feeding on shellfish on the shallow seafloor, their powerful jaws making short work of the toughest shells. The Triassic oceans, once empty, were now a bustling, competitive environment filled with a dazzling array of new reptiles. This explosion of marine life demonstrates the incredible opportunism of evolution. With the old marine ecosystems completely gone, new niches were wide open, and reptiles diversified with astonishing speed to fill them. They were so successful that they would go on to dominate the world's oceans for the next 150 million years. This reawakening of the seas was a vital sign of the planet's overall recovery. It showed that life was not just clinging on, it was innovating, creating bold new designs and reclaiming every corner of the globe. The silent oceans were silent no more. They were once again filled with the hunt, the chase, and the dance of life. As the Triassic period progressed, the world continued to heal and change. The climate became warmer and drier, and the monotonous fern prairies gave way to vast forests of conifers, cycads, and ginkgo trees. Amidst this changing world, a new group of animals appeared, destined to become the most successful and iconic land vertebrates of all time. They were the dinosaurs. The first of their kind were not the giants we often imagine. They were small, nimble, and bipedal creatures, easily overlooked amongst the larger reptiles and cynodonts that still roamed the land. Creatures like Eoraptor and Herrerasaurus were lightly built, probably no bigger than a large dog. These early dinosaurs possessed a key anatomical advantage that set them apart. Their legs were positioned directly beneath their bodies, rather than sprawling out to the sides like other reptiles. This erect stance allowed for more efficient and sustained movement, enabling them to run faster and for longer distances than their contemporaries. This simple change in posture was an evolutionary masterstroke, giving them an edge in both hunting prey and escaping from larger predators. In a world that was becoming increasingly competitive, this superior mobility was a critical factor in their initial success, allowing them to carve out a niche for themselves. They appeared in the late Triassic, around 230 million years ago, on the supercontinent of Pangaea. This single, vast landmass allowed them to spread far and wide, diversifying as they went. Early carnivorous dinosaurs, the theropods, were swift hunters. At the same time, the first long-necked plant-eating dinosaurs, the sauropodomorphs like Plateosaurus, began to appear. These were the ancestors of the colossal giants that would later dominate the Jurassic landscapes. The rise of the dinosaurs was gradual, not a sudden takeover. For millions of years, they shared the world with a host of other creatures, including large amphibian-like predators and formidable crocodile-line archosaurs. The emergence of the dinosaurs marks a pivotal turning point in the story of life. They were a new kind of animal, built for a new world. Their adaptability and their efficient body plan allowed them to thrive as the planet continued to change. At the end of the Triassic, another, smaller extinction event would occur, wiping out many of their competitors. The dinosaurs, however, would pass through this event relatively unscathed. This cleared the stage for them to rise to true global dominance, ushering in the age of dinosaurs. Their humble beginnings in the Triassic were the start of a dynasty that would last for an incredible 165 million years. Reflecting on the Triassic period is to witness one of the most profound comeback stories in our planet's history. It began in a world of ghosts, a desolate landscape scarred by the greatest loss of life it had ever known. The silence must have been overwhelming, yet from that near-total silence, life re-emerged. It did not simply repeat what had come before. It innovated, experimented, and diversified in ways that were entirely new. It is a powerful testament to the sheer, unyielding persistence that is woven into the fabric of life itself. The journey from the quiet despair of the great dying to the vibrant, dynamic world of the late Triassic is a lesson in ultimate resilience. The survivors, like the stubborn Lystrosaurus and our own distant cynodont ancestors, show us that survival is not always about might. It's about adaptability, about having the right tools for a changed world, whether that is a burrow to hide in or the beginnings of warm-bloodedness. The rise of the ichthyosaurs in the oceans and the dinosaurs on land demonstrates evolution's incredible creativity. When ecological voids appear, life rushes in to fill them, producing forms both wonderful and strange. The Triassic was a period of recovery, but it was also a period of breathtaking invention, laying the biological groundwork for the next 150 million years. The world we live in today is a direct consequence of the events of the Triassic. The mammals, which would eventually give rise to humanity, owe their existence to the tenacious cynodonts that survived the Permian extinction and weathered the age of dinosaurs. The birds that fill our skies are the direct descendants of the very dinosaurs that first appeared in those Triassic forests. The thread of life, though stretched to its absolute limit, was never broken. It connects us through an unbroken chain of ancestors to those hardy survivors who clung to existence in a world that had almost ended. And so the story of the Triassic is ultimately one of hope. It reminds us that even after the most devastating catastrophe, life finds a way not just to return, but to flourish in new and unexpected directions. It is a humbling perspective, knowing that the planet has the power to recover from events far beyond our comprehension. The Earth's systems are robust and life is extraordinarily tough. The quiet pulse that survived the Great Dying grew into a roar that echoed through the age of dinosaurs and continues today in the vibrant biodiversity of our modern world. Life endures.